So, Mark, you're writing a piece about the Champions League final and the destinations for it. There have been some issues around finding cities who are willing to host it, even though it's obviously quite a prestigious event. What are the issues that are ongoing, and are we at the start of a journey that might lead us to a Champions League final in the US or Saudi Arabia, possibly?
Well, I mean, right now, I think the public stance from UEFA is that no, they're happy to keep it within Europe, but the situation is they're running out of cities to host the final. Now, they announced last week that the 2028 and 2029 hosting bidding process, and 2028 has got one bidder, Munich, and Munich had the Champions League final this year. So basically, in the space of 3 years, the Allianz Arena will host two Champions League finals. The year after that, 2029, Wembley has announced itself to be a bidder, and Barcelona's new Camp Nou. And I'd imagine it'll go to the Camp Nou because it's 30 years since the last Champions League final. But still, Wembley is always there or thereabouts. And I've been speaking to somebody about this, and they're saying that UEFA are now basically down to 4 or 5 venues that they can rely upon that can do it, because it's not just about staging the game. The Champions League final, it's first of all, you need a stadium that can host at least 65,000 fans. So that rules a lot of stadiums out. But it's also about, infrastructure, airports. Can fans get there and back? Can they get in and out of the city? Hotel space. Can they actually find a place to stay? As we all know, but I've been at the Champions League finals, it costs an absolute fortune to stay in these cities. You have to stay miles out of town. So you need a city that's got the ability to host the event. You've got 2 cities in Russia, Moscow, St. Petersburg are off the rota. You've got Paris, which again is unlikely to be considered for a good while yet because of what happened in 2022 with the Liverpool fans. Rome seems to have dropped off the rota as well because it's deemed as being an outdated stadium now. Infrastructure in the Italian capital is not great. So you're basically looking at Wembley, Munich. I think the other one is Barcelona and Atletico Madrid. The Bernabeu Stadium is obviously an amazing stadium, but I don't think Real, their relationship with UEFA right now, is at a point where they would get a Champions League final. So if you've only got 4 stadiums on rotation, obviously Budapest is hosting the final at the end of this season, but I've been told they're going to really struggle again. One airport, hotel space is going to be difficult. So will it get to the point where it could be in the US? Alexander Chefrin said last year that it's something that's on their thought process. It'd be a hard sell, but I think it's inevitable at some point that a New York or a Dallas or a Los Angeles will want to host the Champions League final, because all of the issues that UEFA face in Europe about stadium size, infrastructure, they're not an issue in the US. I don't know what you guys think, but I think we're about, maybe in the next 10 years we'll see a Champions League final outside of Europe.
I think it's disgusting that the profiteering that goes on around the final every year, and the fact that the way that even the draws are done now, that the delay between knowing obviously there's a fixed date for the Champions League final, but for the knockout rounds and even for the group stages, we know the match weeks, but we don't know the days, and the days now take 48 hours sometimes for it to be confirmed, and by that stage suddenly all the hotels are 3 times as much as they would have been otherwise, or the flights are a lot more expensive. I mean, wherever they hold it, somebody should be looking at that part of the process as well. That it's always the fans of the 2 teams involved that are getting turned over by the methodology through which they select these cities, and that should be part of it. I mean, my view is that a European competition should be settled on European soil. Why are you taking it elsewhere? I don't know whether maybe they could do. Just thinking about tennis, the men's tour finals, had a residency for a number of years. I think they had it in London, they've had it in Shanghai, I think they've had it in Italy as well. Do you think there's a scenario where they could say, okay, for the next 3 years, Wembley has the Champions League final, and then after that we go to Munich for 3 years, and actually you sort of fix it so that everybody kind of knows way ahead of time, and then actually you could control a lot of this profiteering that goes on because you know it from 3 years out.
If UEFA were able to, they would have it at Wembley forever, because first of all, it's a neutral venue, so you're not going to have a situation like in Munich or in Madrid where you could have the host team or Barcelona hosting their final. Secondly, 3, 4 airports in and around London which can host the incoming fans, loads of hotels. It's a global city, and Wembley holds 90,000 fans, almost 20,000 VIP, facilities. So it is the perfect venue for UEFA. They love having it at Wembley because of all those reasons. But possibly. But I think obviously Munich wouldn't be happy about that. Madrid, Barcelona would not be happy about every Champions League final being in London. But there is an argument for that. There's an argument you could say those 4 cities that we spoke about have it on rotation over the next 20 years because, you know, yes, Barcelona and yes, Real Madrid might get to a final, but still that can happen now. You know, Bayern Munich have played a Champions League final at home. They lost to Chelsea in 2012. So it's possible, but, you know, they are running out of cities that can host it. And we've all been to, I think, James, me and you were in Paris for the Champions League final in 2022. It was chaos, wasn't it? It was absolute.
Yeah.
And at Paris, one of the, again, a global city, but hotels were ridiculously expensive. The infrastructure was a joke, and the stadium just not fit for purpose. But if you can't hold the Champions League final, in Paris, what chance have you got?
Because, yeah, but there's a unique set of circumstances to that particular stadium, I would say, and it didn't. I don't know if you felt the same way. I've done games there before and left and not felt safe.
No, absolutely.
Trying to go from the stadium to the station or waiting for a taxi. You know, I think that's a unique situation with that particular stadium. But I don't know. It's going to end up in Saudi Arabia, isn't it? It is. Surely it's going to end up in the middle. It will just go to the highest bidder. And
I was on a tour with United a couple of years ago where we had a briefing with the governor of New Jersey, who was talking. He was there talking to us about the World Cup, but the subject got onto Champions League games, and he said that him and his team would push really hard for meaningful Champions League games. You know, whether it's group games or knockout games, or, you know, obviously the final, they would push quite hard to host that. I did a trip to Saudi Arabia to see Ronaldo when he first played for Al Nassr, and while I was there, the Italian Super Cup was there at the same time, and the week after they were going to have the Spanish Super Cup. I'm amazed that the Community Shield hasn't been moved away from Wembley to Saudi Arabia or the Middle East or America. You've got a situation with La Liga where that Barcelona Villarreal game was going to get held in Miami before there was protest. It's obviously where the game is headed. And when you have these kind of big, prestigious showpiece events, the likes of the FA Cup final or the Champions League final, when they're meant to be held at neutral venues anyway, and you don't have 2 set teams in it, I think it's quite easy to move that game to Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Saudi somewhere, because it's not like moving a Premier League game, because if you tried to do that, there would be absolute outcry about, the home fans would say it's not fair, the away team wouldn't want to travel. I think if you could move the Champions League final, I'm not saying it'll be done in a year or two, but in sort of 10 years time, if you just say, well, we haven't got enough bidders for this game, so we're going to take it to Riyadh where they do want it, I think it's a kind of situation that you can envisage. I think probably we're all just going to have to get used to it, because it is going to happen.
I think the point you made there about the La Liga game in Miami, which has now been called off, the Barcelona Villarreal game, UEFA reluctantly gave that the green light, as well as an Italian game in Australia. For me, UEFA reluctantly giving those a green light was basically them just making sure that they've got a kind of a fallback option. If they suddenly decide to play a Champions League final abroad, they basically almost paved the way for it to happen. So interesting times ahead.